Hey everyone, welcome to the GitOps with Argo and Crossplane Civo online meetup number 10. I'm Kunal, I work as a developer advocate here. Super excited for this session. And yeah, let's get started. So as you can see on the screen, about this session. Before before we diving deep into what we're going to be talking about over here, the real power of Kubernetes lies in its universal control plane. Now, new projects such as Crossplane are building on top of this feature to reimagine the use of K8s beyond orchestration and containers. So Crossplane allows users to manage infrastructure as K8s resources. This makes it possible to implement GitOps best practices, not only for K8s resources, but also to manage the infrastructure. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. So in this session, we will do a showcase on how to create a Civo Kubernetes clusters through the Civo Crossplane Provider. And we will also look at GitOps best practices to manage all of your resources in Kubernetes. And lastly, we will be also providing an overview on how you can take GitOps deployments to the next level with ArgoCD. Talking today, we have some amazing panelists. We have Viktor, who is a developer advocate at Upbound, and we have Anais, who works as in the SRE team here at Civo. So I'm going to hand it over to Anais now for a quick introduction, and yeah, let's get started.
Awesome, thank you, Kunal. So my name is Anais. I joined a few months ago Civo as the SRE team, and before that, I was actually working with Viktor at a different startups in the DevOps space. And before that, I was working for some time in the blockchain space. So I just started learning about everything related to DevOps about 10 months ago. Now at Civo, we just developed a Crossplane provider that allows you to spin up Kubernetes clusters on Civo through Crossplane. Now, there are different ways that you can spin up Kubernetes clusters on Civo. You can use the UI, you can use the client, you can use Terraform, you can use Pulumi, and now you can also use Crossplane. So in this webinar, we're first going to show you, or Viktor is going to show you now, how you can basically set up a Civo cluster with ArgoCD, and then we're going to use that cluster throughout the webinar to showcase GitOps, ArgoCD, and Crossplane. So Viktor, you want to take over?
Thank you. Yes, so as you already heard, my name is Viktor. I work for Upbound. I'm also newbie in, just like Anais, just not in the same company. And we are going to talk about how we can combine Civo with Crossplane. And since Crossplane is a Kubernetes-based tool, then we can leverage the broader ecosystem, the whole ecosystem of Kubernetes. And part of that ecosystem is ArgoCD, which I'm going to show you how you can use to manage infrastructure in a GitOps type of style, way, what's or not, right? So very quick introduction. Crossplane is all about leveraging control plane, in this case, Kubernetes control plane, to perform operations, which is a very different approach when compared to, let's say, CLI-based type of operations. And the reasons are basically the same. Why would we do infrastructure that way are the same as why would we do, let's say, applications, right? Traditionally, in the past, you would deploy your application by SSHing into a server and then executing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 commands and doing something, and that's about it. And then you just hope that it will continue being in the state you want it to be, right? Since then, we adopted schedulers, control plane with Kubernetes, precisely because that model fits better, especially on long term. So instead of saying, hey, I'm going to execute this command and then this will happen as a result of that command, we are telling control plane what is our desired state. Hey, I want to have 7 replicas of my application running, and there should be 7 no matter what happens. Doesn't matter whether nodes go down, whether this happens, that happens. It's from that moment on, it's a job of control plane to maintain the desired state instead of us imperatively specifying what we want. Now, what Crossplane is trying to do is basically the same thing, except on infrastructure level. I mean, it dives slightly into application level, but it's mostly for infrastructure, right? So we want to leverage the power of Kubernetes Crossplane to manage, to basically take a role of being an operator instead of us doing that with everything that brings. Now, I will not bore you. I get nervous when I don't don't type keyboard for too long, so I will not bore you with much more explanation. What Crossplane is, ask me in the comments. I will answer whatever questions you have, unless the guys from Civo kick me out of this session. I don't know if there is a time limit though. So anyways, let me go to the demo and show you what I mean by all that and other things. And to do that, I probably need to share my screen. Here's my screen. So interrupt me, any of you interrupt me. I like being interrupted with questions or whatever. Anyway, so I'm going to ignore ArgoCD for a moment. And we are going to go directly towards creating infrastructure, and then I will show you how to do that in GitOps style, GitOps way. Now, normally, if I would be doing the session that I'm doing right now, the demo in, let's say, AWS, I would have already faked that I'm creating a cluster, because creating a cluster in AWS would take anything between 15, 20 minutes. But you're in luck now, right? Because Civo is very, very fast, so I can actually do everything live here instead of having things prepared. Anyways, so let me show you a simple example, right? If I have this definition, this would be a definition of a cluster that I want to manage, and in this case is in Civo, right? So it is based on Kubernetes API, in this case, Crossplane API, already propagated to Kubernetes. I'm going to define something called Civo Kubernetes. Now, the name, why it's called Civo Kubernetes, is interesting because basically Anais was not very creative when giving the name, when he created a provider. And then we have I'm going to give a name to the cluster itself. I'm going to say, hey, I would like one instance, one of the worker nodes of that cluster. This is going to be the size. And I want to install a couple of, actually one application, only Prometheus operator, and that's about it. The rest is not that exciting. I'm specifying where it should write the connection details for my cluster, and I'm telling this definition to use a provider. That's the one that that Anais, or I'm not sure whether she did it alone or with help. Anyways, that Civo contributed to the project.
All alone.
So
it was all my doing.
All you. Okay, because
No.
I had a lot of complaints,
of course not.
and I was afraid
okay, the
that
data
I would,
directed to me as well. Yeah.
Anyways, so, and I'm treating this as any other Kubernetes resource. Basically, what I'm about to do now is create a desired state of Kubernetes resource, just as I would do with anything else, just as I would do with deployment, stateful set, Istio something, whatever that something is, right? So kubectl, apply, -- file name, and what was the address? Urlichs cluster something Civo, I think. There we are, right? So I sent the manifest to Kubernetes, and from now on, Crossplane with Civo provider should figure out what needs to happen, and it will maintain that state forever and ever and ever. And we can check that with saying kubectl get Civo Kubernetes, and we can see that this resource has a message, cluster is being created, it is not yet ready, it takes approximately 90 seconds. And once the state changes here, we should see the cluster fully operational, fully created, and all the jazz, right? And I can watch the progress. Now, let me go to the Civo
Viktor,
web
can I ask
UI
a
and see.
quick question from the audience?
Yes, you can. Please do.
So Daniel asks, which K8 control plane is your context pointing to in this case?
It is, yeah, okay, yes. So you need, for Crossplane to be running, Crossplane is a set of Kubernetes controllers, basically, or sitting on top of Kubernetes control plane. I'm running right now for the purpose of this demo, local Minikube or kind. I'm not sure which cluster I spin up, right? But I have Crossplane and ArgoCD running, which I'm going to explain later. Now, for a serious usage, I would have a real cluster running somewhere. And I would think of that cluster as being master cluster, the one that orchestrates everything, right? I'm not sure whether that answered the question. I often forget the question in the middle of answering, so just let me know.
Yeah, Daniel, if that did not answer your question, make sure to let us know. And oh no, he's just replied thanks. So I think it did.
Cool. So here we are. This is the cluster in Civo that I created a moment ago, and it has whatever it needs to have, right? This is a node pool, and now I'm going to show you one of the differences between being imperative CLI driven instead of control plane. Let's say that I destroy this node pool, right? Because I'm a destructive person. And now all of a sudden my cluster doesn't have any more node pools, and node pool is back, right? Or if I delete the cluster completely, here we are. I haven't actually tried this. If it doesn't work, it's going to be Anais' fault. And
it does
cluster
work.
is gone.
I've tried
right?
this. It should, at least for me. Let's see.
It should, yeah. So
what's gonna happen?
Yeah, I'm trying to find something to blame Anais, but I will be successful.
Keep trying. It worked earlier. It should work. Let's see.
Soon. It really depends. I'm not sure what is the.
This is the UI. This is Kai's responsibility.
Yeah, keep rolling that stuff downhill.
Yeah. No, it should spin it out.
Anyways,
it might take a few more moments.
Exactly, because it is actually validating the state every I'm not sure how many seconds and what's or not. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make here is that actually you can see here ready false, right? So it detected that something changed. And the point I'm trying to make is that it is not just doing what needs to be done, but it is continuously reconciling the desired state and the actual state. So the infrastructure that I'm creating by creating certain Kubernetes resources is always or almost always going to be in that state, no matter whether I intentionally or accidentally destroy something, whether something happens on the provider side and what's or not, right? And that's the...
So once the cluster is back, how would you, instead of deleting resources from the cluster, how would you add resources to the cluster? So right now you have one application on the running on the cluster. Yeah, how would you modify it now, given that you can't do it from the UI?
To add more applications.
For instance,
for example,
how would you change it?
Yes.
Or increase the node pool. Right now you're running one. It's quite small, no?
Exactly. So where was that? Yeah, I actually gave you this question because it wasn't working 3 days ago, and I thought that I would catch you in having something done not correctly. But anyway, you can just add additional applications here, right? This is the Civo API that, among other things, allows you to define how many applications you would be having, and I would have here Urlichs cluster Civo, right? Give me the name, Anais. Argo.
And then -cd, I think. -cd.
There you go.
I think that's how it's called. If it doesn't work, it's Kai's fault.
Exactly. And I just applied that change to the configuration, and soon, a few moments later, it will be reconciled, right? And it will continuously maintain the state. Same as if I destroy the nodes or a cluster, it will reappear a few moments later. If I would destroy Prometheus operator here, I'm not sure how I would do that. Anyway, if I could destroy Prometheus operator, it would reappear, right?
So you can't actually destroy it from there, but if you were to delete the namespace, for example, on the using kubectl.
Yeah, exactly. So that was that's basically how you would manage infrastructure, and in this case, I'm using Civo, and there is not much more to it. Now, what is the advantage of using tools like Crossplane is that it can plug into the rest of Kubernetes ecosystem, which is a huge advantage, right? And I could do the same thing with ArgoCD, and give you a quick introduction of how you can use Kubernetes and ArgoCD to actually ArgoCD to manage your infrastructure in the same way as how you would manage your applications based on GitOps principles. So for the first thing I'm going to do is delete the cluster that I created, but this time delete it properly, meaning that this time it will not pop back. It will not be recreated for a simple reason, because I changed the desired state instead of changing the actual state. So let me show you my ArgoCD setup. So apps, YAML. This is, I already set up ArgoCD in advance. And what I did is that I told ArgoCD, hey, how about you monitor this repository, Crossplane QVL ArgoCD demo, right? And make sure that whatever is in the directory production inside of that repository is synchronized to the cluster. And if I look at the production directory, this one that is specified, this is kind of like a root ArgoCD application from which it branches further. If I take a look at the production directory, I have a couple of things there, right? Actually, let me do this. Production, right?
Can I quickly interrupt?
Yes, you can.
Does the audience, like, does everybody watching right now know what's the difference between the desired state and the actual state? Like when we mentioned that, could you maybe please just in the chat put a 1 if you know what's meant by that and a 0 if you don't, like, well, yes or no or something, right? Like just to clarify, right? If and it's cool, like we can go over that. That was actually planned to go to some extent over that. So just let us know, because those are terms that we referred to. So I just want to make sure everybody can follow. Awesome.
If I read the plan in advance, I would probably have stopped and let you explain it.
It's okay, carry on. Just you have 20 more minutes to entertain everybody, so go for it.
Okay, cool. So I in that directory production, I defined, hey, if this is the directory you're monitoring, ArgoCD, there should be an application that defines Crossplane itself. Crossplane is running in this cluster. Sealed secrets, because I want to store secrets in Git, and this might be the easiest way. And Team A infra, which I don't remember what it is. So let me double check quick. Okay, yes, Team A infra is actually the important one. Here it is. That says, okay, for this application, monitor the directory, this one, Team A infra, and that directory is the key to what I'm trying to do. So what I'm trying to do, and before I do it, let me go back to Civo and confirm that my Kubernetes cluster is gone. Yeah, there is no Kubernetes cluster. So if I would like to do the same thing to manage infrastructure in a GitOps type of way, all I have to do is push stuff to a specific directory that is being monitored by ArgoCD. And I'm going to do that right now by, what am I going to do? Yes, I'm going to first show you a definition that I'm going to use, cluster.yaml. This is yet another concept in Crossplane that is called composites, meaning that I can combine different resources and simplify how they are managed. In this case, I'm using AWS that has 57 different resources that are required to use to create a Kubernetes cluster. And this is arguably a simpler definition for developers to manage than just going through all those bunch of resources, you know, subnets, VPCs, and what's not. So I'm going to copy that file, cluster.yaml, to team A infra. That's the directory that is monitored by ArgoCD. And I'm going to modify it so that nobody gets confused and say, no, in this specific case, I do not want AWS. I want to use Civo cluster, right? And the reason why this will work simply because I hid the implementation of different variations of what I might want to do within composites and made it very, very simple in this case. And I can use specific parameters like, hey, what should be the size of the nodes? Let's say medium. And what should be the version of Kubernetes, what should be the number of nodes, and so on and so forth, right? So it is a way how to simplify, how to abstract what is really going on behind the scenes. Like in this case, Crossplane will figure out that medium should be whatever is the one of the sizes, in this case in Civo, right? So I have that, and I'm going to, did I push that? No, I didn't. I'm going to push that to Git. Commit -m. I'm too lazy to write, and Git push, right? So I just push that to Git, and that's about it. So what I'm trying to convey here, that our job as developers or engineers or whatever we are, is to write code. I include YAML in this case in code, since it is interpretable by machines, and push to Git and let the system do the rest. And in this case, that system is, among other things, ArgoCD. And if I look at the team A infra, you can see that it already figured out. It says succeeded a few seconds ago. So a few seconds ago, ArgoCD detected the change in the Git repository and synchronized it with my cluster, the control cluster, right? Where ArgoCD is running, where Crossplane is running, and what's not. And it created a composite resource called team A. That's this YAML, right? On the other hand,
sorry,
yes?
I'm interrupting again.
No, go ahead.
So
please.
just to clarify, ArgoCD lives within the cluster and is pulling the changes from outside into the cluster, like it's monitoring
Correct.
outside. Can you elaborate a bit on the benefits of having something living inside of your cluster that's pulling the changes from the outside into the cluster and basically monitoring changes from within the cluster instead of pushing changes from outside into the cluster? You know what I mean? I think that might be a nice distinction to just to emphasize on a bit more.
Yeah, so the whole idea is that, let me get this. Okay, cool. So the whole idea is that I have a cluster, right? No, this is a wrong type of, okay. It doesn't work. I cannot draw. What's happening here? Wait, I will figure it out, I promise. Okay, now it works. Okay, so I have a cluster that is, right, that is doing something, right? And I'm assuming in this context that I have a fleet of clusters that I want to manage. I have whole infrastructure and so on and so forth. And this is a person. And theoretically, I do not want, not theoretically, in practice, I do not want to allow this. I do not want anybody to go to my cluster and do random stuff. And in this case, all this could be living in Civo. I do not want people to actually access Civo either, because that's insecure. And more importantly, I mean, whether it's secure or not depends really how much trust you have in your team and what's or not. But more importantly, that it's undocumented. If I go there and execute kubectl something, or if I SSH and do something, or if I go into web UI, in this case Civo, and do something, what I'm effectively doing is being disrespectful to my colleagues, because nobody else knows what I did, right? Nobody else is aware of what happened and so on and so forth. Now, those things using web UI is great as a starting thing, right? Because it's very easy to figure out things, you know, clicking buttons and what's not. Using kubectl is a good intermediate step because you're still getting familiar. But eventually, what you want is that you have a Git repo or many repositories, and you want to push your changes there. Just as if you're writing JavaScript, Java, Python, whatever you're writing, you're not compiling it directly from your laptop. You're always pushing it in Git so that we can all see what is happening by evaluating the code. We can create a pull request so that others can review it and merge it and so on and so forth, right? All the best practices that we've been using for developing applications, we are now applying on managing states of different things. And in this context, there is, in this case, Argo, that is monitoring what is happening in Git and applying those, making sure that the desired state, this is what I want. This is the state I want, not what I want to do, but the state that I want to have. And it is applying it inside of the cluster, inside of a different cluster. If we have multiple clusters, and what's not, right? And when those things happen to be definitions of infrastructure, then Crossplane will take over after ArgoCD creates Kubernetes resources and create infrastructure, which could be, I don't know, storage, maybe a database, another cluster, what's not. I hope that this clarified a bit.
Can I jump in on a question that's coming
Yes,
in from
please.
the audience, kind of on this? This came before you started talking about Argo, but so I'll just read out the question. Let's say we're managing clusters for our customers. What's the best way to have that set up? Is it one single management cluster with Crossplane that manages all the other Civo clusters, or is there a better option?
I cannot answer directly because it really depends. And it depends on the level of control you want to have and the level of access you want to have and what's or not, right? Crossplane itself is very low on resource usage demands, right? So you can have one for each customer, let's say one instance of of Crossplane or one master Crossplane. Sorry for that, for all of them. I see much more commonly used one instance that manages all infrastructure. But I've seen also a few cases where people like to split it mostly kind of like, oh, this is your infrastructure management, this is my infrastructure management. We don't mix with each other.
What would be the difference between those in the setup? So if I'm the infrastructure management person, however you want to call them, and I set up the clusters with Crossplane for different teams, for example, how would I make them different?
So it depends also how teams are organized. So if we have different teams in full control of everything, including cluster level resources, then multi-instances would make more sense. In majority of cases, at least in larger organizations, those teams are actually not working on cluster level resources, but creating claims. So I wouldn't, the definition of what my cluster could be or should be, the composite, that would be created by, let's say, infrastructure team. And then whomever wants to create a cluster or database or whatever creates a claim in their namespace. And in that case, one Crossplane instance is enough. Yeah? Shall we go and see what's happening with Argo or more questions?
But
yes, please.
So maybe Kai wants to read it because I don't know what MGMT stands for.
Yeah, sure. So is this the one?
Oh, management.
Yeah, management. Yeah.
So would the approach
also
be
banned,
something?
but it's management in this case.
That's okay. So where is it? It changed. So would the approach be something like Crossplane and ArgoCD in the management cluster, like in the main cluster, and then Crossplane creates the app cluster and pushes ArgoCD there for the apps to be deployed using GitOps as well. So basically you have one cluster with ArgoCD that takes control of Crossplane or is within the same cluster of Crossplane. And then with that, you create the other cluster. And on this cluster, you have then ArgoCD where people can then deploy their applications.
Yeah,
Is that
yes. I mean,
you could also
with ArgoCD, you can do the same thing like what I was saying with Crossplane. Like kind of you can have one ArgoCD managing all the applications in all the clusters, or one ArgoCD per cluster. And the difference is that my opinion is kind of the other way around when ArgoCD is concerned. I think that it makes more sense to have ArgoCD in every single cluster, because in that case you can have those clusters completely locked and saying, hey, nobody can access this cluster, right? Not even process from a different cluster, meaning ArgoCD in a different cluster. So if you need it fully locked in, then ArgoCD in each cluster is a great solution, because then it will be pulling data from Git, but nothing will be pushing to that cluster. And in that case, if that would be the goal, then that Crossplane composite, which is basically a collection of all the resources that you need with a simplified user interface, or no, depending on what you choose, then that one would, among other things, install ArgoCD in that cluster. Like, hey, create cluster, create this, create that. And once the cluster is created, take the connection string of that cluster kubeconfig and apply this Helm chart that will install ArgoCD and probably another Kubernetes resource, which would be ArgoCD application that points to a certain repository, and off you go, right? So again, one execution of something or one definition of something that would, among other things, install ArgoCD there if that's the goal.
What would you say are like the current constraints or use cases that cannot be handled by ArgoCD?
By ArgoCD,
yeah.
I'm not sure that. I mean, constraint could be that if you want to combine declarative with imperative something, right? Like, hey, let's say that I'm using right now some type of pipelines, let's say Jenkins or Circle or whatever you're using, and then I apply those Kubernetes manifests or Helm charts or customize with kubectl this and that, and after that I execute this script that will do some weird things, right? Now you cannot do that with ArgoCD unless that script is actually in a container that will be started as a sidecar, and then we go into complicated setup. But as long as what you want, what you need can be defined declaratively, no other constraint comes to my mind regarding ArgoCD. It's essentially not a complicated tool, and that's the beauty of it. In a simplified version, it's never really that simple. It just periodically goes to Git and says, "Hey, did anything change? Yes, I'm going to apply the change to the cluster." It's not that easy, but that's the gist of it, right?
We had another question about the difference between Flux and ArgoCD and where the benefits within each. So I have my own opinion, which I can provide, but I know you have.
I want to hear it.
Wait in a second, but I know you also have videos on your own YouTube channel on both tools that provide an overview. But I guess in this case, like, why did you choose in this case to use ArgoCD specifically? Because was it because that's just how we named the webinar, or because in the marketplace in Civo you could also as well provide Flux? The thing is so here's one of the benefits that I would see is that on a marketplace, you can also install the other Argo tools. So if you use Argo workflows, Argo rollouts, Argo events, then I guess it would make more sense if you're just staying within that space and you just use ArgoCD as well, if you're already dependent on the other, or when you want to integrate with the other tools as well. And then their UIs make it maybe more accessible to different people within a team that you don't have a Flux, I believe.
Yeah,
it's like high level.
That would be
difference.
If I answered, I would give the same answer. Basically, Argo ecosystem makes ArgoCD potentially a better choice, and it has a web UI.
That's all the difference you see. You don't see any technical differences.
I mean, there are technical. The way how it boots. So there are some things that are slightly better in one than the other. Like, I really like how Flux bootstraps itself, the way how it installs itself by pushing directly files to Git. So it kind of saves me 15 minutes. It takes me 15 minutes more to bootstrap Argo than Flux. But I think that, ArgoCD and Flux, I think, are equivalent to the Cold War. After, when Russia and the US were competing.
Yeah.
And whenever somebody figures out something that is better, then it doesn't take long until the other one has it. So they're more or less on pair. I would say that the major difference is the ecosystem of Argo.
Okay. And then I guess going back to Crossplane and the example, I think you were not finished with the demo. And there was a question earlier that we got directly on the cluster Civo YAML. And the question is, the cluster Civo YAML is a claim for like that's basically a question, like that's the understanding. The cluster Civo YAML is a claim for a resource that is exposed by Civo Provider. And in the claim manifest, we specify the infrastructure that will be provisioned. In the case, it will be on Civo Cloud, the application stack, just like we can do with the Crossplane Helm provider or with Kubevela. Like, is it a similar process, would you say?
I'm sorry, I haven't understood half of what you said, Anais.
It's okay. That's okay. Basically, the cluster civo.yaml is the resource, and then we issue the claim on that. Like basically, we have a resource that's provided by the provider config, by the Civo provider I think that's how it's called. And then we we access this resource. We claim ownership of, or like we claim, I don't know how to put it in English. We claim it. And then, so we have a definition that already exists on how a cluster, this is how a Civo cluster can look like the different properties it can have. And then we basically file a claim for one of those cluster types, right?
Correct.
Is that how you put it?
That's correct.
Cool.
So you can either use, there are two ways you can do, like the first one that I showed, which is just going directly for Civo provider, right? And creating, and then it's a cluster level resource, and you deal with it in that way, right? Now, alternative to that, which is what I'm doing now with ArgoCD, or about to do, is to create a composite, which is, I created one cluster Civo that basically says, hey, this is a composition. And in that composition, you can have different resources. Now, I was too lazy. I have only one resource, which is Civo cluster, but the second resource could be maybe Helm configuration, and the third could be installing ArgoCD, for example. And I'm now ignoring the fact that actually Civo allows you to install it, so you wouldn't do that, but just trying to figure out the example why you would have different resources. Anyways, when I'm creating, so I'm effectively with this creating a completely new Kubernetes resource that is not provided out of the box by anybody anywhere. And what matters in the context of the answer is that I'm saying, hey, if you want to treat this as, where is it now? I'm just trying to find it. Oh, I didn't specify a claim, I think. Oh yeah, to consume this, we would do something like this, which is, there we are, right? And here it is. I'm creating a composite cluster, which is a name that I defined, that says, if you want to treat it as a cluster level resource, it is called composite cluster. If you want to treat it as a claim, meaning namespace level resource, it's called cluster claim. And that's all. So if I, where was it? Team A infra here, team A infra cluster. I'm using now, where is it? Where is it? Yeah, I'm using now cluster level resource. I could have specified here, it would be, instead of composition ref, it would be composition claim. I'm not sure the exact system syntax, but something like this. And then reference would be whatever the claim reference is. So yes, you can treat it on a cluster level or namespace level, and it all depends on which name you use, and the name is defined in your composition.
There are more questions specifically on Crossplane. We could, if there's something else you want to show, you can maybe show that first, or I can go ahead and ask them, depending on what you prefer.
Quickly, this demo is literally going to finish in a few minutes, and
okay, go ahead, finish, and then we can finish. Then we have enough time for questions. And
yeah. So ArgoCD synchronizes my Git repository with my control cluster, and the result of that is refresh. There you go. Cluster is up and running, and now I'm finished with the demo.
Perfect. So how Okay, well, I guess personal plug, how difficult is it to set up Crossplane on the original cluster? Like how difficult is it to get from nothing, no cluster, nothing to get up and running? Since I guess we didn't precisely cover that at the beginning.
Yes, but I can show that.
You could also do it within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
No, but but maybe
yeah.
show. And also, I guess here, plug real quick. We're going to publish a guide on how you can set up, how you can use Crossplane on Civo, which details also the benefits on Crossplane, why you would use it, and then walks you through the few commands that you need to set it up. So stay tuned for that.
So I'm going to answer the question with relatively easy, and I'm not going to give anybody more detail because then they would have no incentive to read your blog.
Okay, awesome. So we will publish it either tomorrow or the next days, but as soon as possible. So stay tuned for that. Also, if you sign up to Civo right now and you haven't signed up yet, you get $250 worth of credit. So you should sign up and try it out. There's really no reason not to do it. So, yeah.
The trick is that you guys are so cheap that it's close to impossible to spend that money.
But you managed it somehow anyways, didn't you?
Victor, that sounds like a challenge. Are you issuing a challenge?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I didn't. I spent a couple of bucks so far.
Okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The request I made you privately earlier, that was to extend that money. Not to give me more. You gave me more, which is a
I
good
was
thing.
confused. I was like, how did you manage to spend all of that?
No. There is a time limit.
Okay, awesome. Anyway, sign up and try it out. And other question on Crossplane. What is the current status maturity of Crossplane to deploy cloud infrastructure like managed databases or the AWS Lambdas? Like how far what kind of providers do you currently have?
So if it's
what could you currently do with Crossplane?
Yeah, so the currently we have officially AWS, Azure, Google, Helm, and probably 2 or 3 more that I cannot remember now from the top of my head. And then there are community contributions. I mean, everything is actually managed by community, so it's very hard to distinguish. But providers like Civo, which did not yet reach the state of being in crossplane.io docs, it will get there. Until then, it is available. Documentation is in the repo. I don't remember the repo, but Anais will probably paste the link.
Okay.
So there is. So not all providers are in the docs yet, and we have a program, some kind of compliance that once everything is validated, once it passes all the checks, it goes to docs officially. But there's much more than what is in docs. And the secret plan, I mean, it's not a secret plan, but the main goal we have with this quarter, for this quarter, is to drastically increase the provider coverage to get much closer to where we should be. So like you can do most of the things you would like to do with AWS. You can do everything that is literally possible with Civo, thanks to Anais.
Anais, I'm gonna jump in.
57,000 services.
I'm going to ask a question extended from that. Is this one came in from Chris Murray? If new features, regions, etc., come to Civo, how quickly can we hope to have these available in the Crossplane provider?
It's a great question. So, well, first of all, if there's anything wrong right now with the provider, or anything that you would like to have added to the provider, any functionality, then please do let us know in the Slack channel, on the Civo Slack channel, which you will get access to once you sign up to Civo, or by joining these webinars, right? So we would love to hear feedback on it, and we will treat it as part of our product offering, let's say. So as much as we support Terraform and you creating clusters through Terraform or Pulumi or through our CLI, we will ensure that you can always do it with, always is a strong word, don't quote me on that, that you can do it with the Crossplane Civo provider. So yeah, it's literally, this is the first time that it's been used. So I hope it's working properly for everybody. If not, if there are any bugs, then please do let us know. We will aim to fix it as soon as possible. Yeah. So bouncing it back, I guess another question to Viktor. There was a question asking, and I'm summarizing right now. I could also read the direct question, but it's basically asking about the difference. Is Crossplane a set of operators? When I use a provider, what is the difference to using an operator? How is it similar or different to operators, as we know within the Kubernetes ecosystem?
It is using an operator model to an extent, so it is the same. I mean, when you deploy Crossplane, you're deploying a set of operators that are making sure that things are happening, right? I mean, I think that we are reaching the point in Kubernetes that everything is an operator, no matter whether it makes sense or it doesn't.
Also, the app delivery SIG or tag, they're called, just released a white paper on operators. So if you're curious about operators and the specifics on operators, then have a look at the white paper. It's pretty extensive, just for those who are also new to operators. What I would add here actually as well, what's the difference between Crossplane and using operators, having used both. I think the process using Crossplane is quite different. Like the process that you implement, also collaborating with people, you will get additional benefits with Crossplane over using operators. So it's, I guess, also from my perspective, I would argue it's also a process team cultural thing than using operators, but that's an opinionated answer. So just my experience. So maybe that's not true for other teams or other people. But yeah, do we have more questions, Kai?
We do.
I just have to have a look, and so maybe you have one prepared.
There's one specifically addressed to Viktor, so I'm just going to read it.
Awesome,
this is from Rotem. Viktor, it seems that from the infra layer perspective, we can create our own XRDs with Crossplane. So regarding the application layers, it seems that it is very convenient to manage the application layer with the Civo provider than via the Helm provider or via Kubevela. Am I right?
Yes. So I wouldn't use Crossplane to manage applications. I would use Crossplane only to bootstrap my cluster initially to have what I need, like Kubevela or Civo applications or whatever, ArgoCD, right? So on application level, at least I personally tend to use Crossplane only to get the bare minimum from which that minimum can create the rest, right? I do not necessarily use Crossplane to manage applications.
Yes, and I think, Anais, I think your guide kind of goes into precisely this, is it brings in Argo for the fact that then you deploy stuff through that. So you use the Crossplane to bring up the infrastructure and the base layer of things, and then you layer the applications on top.
I think she wanted to say yes.
Yeah, that's how I would put it.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing to add.
If you go to a cool YouTube channel, you will find actually exactly that scenario. I think I published a video maybe 2 weeks ago.
Awesome. Can you do the banner again?
The banner again? Yes, I can, because I'm technologically advanced. I can do things that
you're more advanced. Exactly. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I have to upscale my setup. No, yeah. Awesome. Do we have any more questions from YouTube or from the chat? Now's the time to ask. If anybody has questions, now's the time.
I see there's one question. Says that 1 second, let me just check.
While you're looking for it, I've got one that I can ask now.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So this one came in from Alex Negulescu. Can one mix up Civo with GCP and EKS? I'm assuming with relation to Crossplane and using this sort of building of infra. And I mean, the answer to that is yes. Yes, you can.
Absolutely.
And you can also use as your base management cluster that just has to use Crossplane. You can use Civo and spin it for everybody, just their own cluster that they can access, because there's little that can go wrong using Civo. And then you can allow people with that to spin up other resources and other providers as well, because they are more complicated. So you have more resources that you could spin up. That's another solution that you could do. So you have Civo, and then you have the different spin-offs and the other providers. Kunal, do you have a question? Do you have something?
Sure. So Yusuf is asking, what are some reasons for choosing Crossplane at the first place for this session, and how folks at Civo see it growing in the future?
So the main reason was that we wanted to integrate with Crossplane because we see that Crossplane is doing something different to other projects in the space. And it's interesting to have that part of the Civo ecosystem, let's say. And we also got lots of requests from the community to add a Civo provider. So we are highly community driven, and that's why we made it a priority to spend some time developing a provider and spend time in the future maintaining that provider. Now, as our offering within Civo grows, for instance, we are adding this year as well new regions to Civo and other tools and features. So as our offering grows, we will also expand the Civo Crossplane Provider. So right now it has the functionality that Civo has, but then it will grow with the platform as well. So it made sense to create the provider right now. Anything else? Any other questions?
I've got one which is more around the sort of GitOps kind of thing and the whole paradigm. And this is from yeah, exactly. So how does the promotion of the deployment through different stages or environments, so dev, QA, staging, prod, how is that handled with GitOps?
So the way how at least I organize it is that, and there are really zillion ways to do it. I would keep manifests in repositories of applications. So if I have application A, I have manifest there. If I have application B, another repository with manifest of that application. And then I would normally have one or more repositories that define environments. Let's say one repository that has a directory production, directory staging, directory whatever, right? And those directories have, in this context, ArgoCD applications, which are basically links to where the final manifests are with additional variables, right? So it would be, hey, application A in production is in the same location like in staging, but for production, you should overwrite host to be acme.com, and in staging should be staging.acme.com, right? So it's just about playing with ArgoCD applications without really touching, or application manifests without touching the manifests of applications themselves. So it's a linking system. It's kind of providing hyperlinks in different directories.
Thanks. Kunal, have you got any other questions from anywhere? Because I think I'm through the ones that I can see.
Yep, me too. Guess we answered all the questions that were asked in the chat as well.
Awesome. And you can always reach out on the Civo Slack or the Crossplane Slack if you have more questions, right?
There's
Twitter as well, exactly.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, I see we're a little about time as well, but if you have any other questions, let me just check once again. See any more questions over here. Cool. Alrighty. Well, thanks a lot for joining, everyone. Really appreciate it. And this particular recording is also going to be, added on YouTube, same link, and you can, watch it again and again as many times as you like. And yeah, really appreciate everyone joining, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.